Hey, guess what day it is? It's podcast day, May 13th.
Podcast day? That's almost as fun as free comic book day.
Yeah, that comes around once a year. Podcast day comes around multiple times a year.
Free
But
comic book day is the Christmas for nerds.
yeah, yeah. Now, do they give away just one comic or many comics?
They have pre-made free comic days.
Oh,
So
so they just give you
they're not
junk.
like they're not like actual issues. They're pre-made and pre-shipped and free comic book day comic and they're branded as free comic book day.
Well,
So
oh well.
I mean a lot of them will contain canon storylines. That way people can see what's going on and jump into it. But
Yeah. I have a friend that's the only day he gets comic books because he's poor. Darren.
are we talking about comics for the podcast? We could talk about comics.
You don't do comic books anymore because.
No, because the market is saturated. Because what happens is, and I think you realize this, is that like you want to buy Batman, okay, but then in order to follow the Batman storyline, you have to buy Batman and Robin, Detective Comics, uh, Oracle, Robin, Nightwing, and whatever other crap they come out with in order to follow like one storyline. Sometimes, especially if it's a major arc, it's just too much. I understand they want to keep comics cheap, but they saturate the market with all these side stories. I mean, you want to buy a Batman comic, you should just be able to buy Batman, right?
Well, that's how it used to be. When I bought Spider-Man comics when I was a young kid, I would buy. There were like four types of Spider-Man: Amazing Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, the Web of Spider-Man, blah blah blah. Right? But they all kind of contain their own storyline.
Right.
And then there would be sometimes that they would say, okay, now we're going to cross all these, and there's going to be a big story, and it's going to
Yeah.
involve all of them, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Once in a while is fine, but sometimes if you have to do that as a chore in order to follow a storyline, you have to buy 5 or 6 different, character issues or whatever. It's ridiculous. I think, like uh, Captain America Civil War or Marvel Civil War, whatever the official title was. Maybe it's just Civil War. I don't know. I'm old. It was a long time ago. Uh, they had like 6 or 7 main issues for Civil War that told the main part of the story. But between the issues, they would have all these other issues, Black Panther, Iron Man, Captain America. So let's say between Civil War 1 and Civil War 2, if you didn't buy several of these issues, when Civil War 2 came out, you are already lost and behind on the story.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really crappy way for them to make money, I think. It's just,
Yeah.
if you go to Japan and manga is super huge in Japan and you want to read Attack on Titan, right? When you go from Attack on Titan 1 to Attack on Titan 2, you don't have to buy, Attack on Titan High School, Attack on Titan, Lost Women or whatever they call that new one. You don't have to buy all these different side stories to
Those
just
side
follow
stories are alone and on its
right,
own.
and that's exactly true. If you like the characters and you like the environment and the world, you can buy that, but they won't be intertwined in any way, right? I mean, it's
Right.
just
They're their own set side stories that you can follow.
yeah. I think that's what comic books need to get back to.
But
You know,
there's a big difference, right? Manga usually has a stopping point. Comic books don't, and they're very very uh, confusing. I mean, how many times do superheroes die and then come back to life?
right?
That's why I got out of it because it got to a point where it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, manga usually has a character arc, and they'll run it for so long, and then they'll stop it either because the creator had a story he wanted to tell in mind, or uh, they ran out of money or whatever the case is. They just tell one story, but they can do that with these comics. Like let's talk about Civil War again. Just go back to that because it's easy. Uh, they can have a Civil War contained story and move on from there and keep Batman or not Batman, Captain America and keep Iron Man and have them go their separate ways and do their own stories. You know, they don't have to stop those characters and, you know, just because the Civil War arc ended like they would in Japan. But again, they don't have to have such a huge variety to where, you know, you have to buy 20 different comics to understand one storyline.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. It's a bit ridiculous, and it's a cash grab. I mean, that's all it really is. They want to make money. Comics are what? Well, they're now like $4 a pop, $4 or $5, aren't they?
Right. Yeah. DC for a while, I don't know if they still did. They tried to make it so they would only charge $2.99 still, but they cut pages out of their comics. You know, so
Yeah.
instead of making them 35, they made them like 28 pages or some crazy thing like that with more ads and whatnot.
It's like buying the ketchup, right? You go to the store and you get the ketchup and you look and well, they don't want to raise the price of the ketchup because that looks bad. But what they do is they'll put a indention in the bottom so there's not as much ketchup, but it doesn't look like there's less ketchup.
Yeah, they
So
reduce the ounces. I mean,
yeah,
heck, back when I started in retail, you could buy a box of Kleenex that was like 200 count. Now they're like 160, 150. I mean,
yeah,
we'll just keep reducing the sizes and keeping the price the same, you know, which is fine. But again, you comic books are a really untapped market, you know, for each generation, right? So you're a parent and you're like, oh my God, I love Spider-Man. I'm going to take my kids to see the new Spider-Man movie.
right.
And then they find out, oh, it's a comic book. And you go to your local comic book store. And you're like, okay, well, I want to buy Spider-Man, get my kids introduced. And the nerdy comic book guy is like, okay, well, you're going to need these 10 issues to start. And you have to come back at least once a month, you know, whatever. It's like,
Right.
I think that comic books would do well to follow more of a Japanese manga format. Like I said, it doesn't have to follow it completely to where, you know, they have concluding story arcs and they're constantly coming out with new things. But
New IPs and
right, I mean, they could, you know, have a little more contained, come out with one Spider-Man every 3 months or something like that. But the Spider-Man is a thick volume, you know, $10. I mean, I would like to see how much, you know, graphic novels in America, once they're, you know, basically compiled comic book collections, how those sell compared to the actual comic book versions of them.
mm-hmm.
Because
Right.
I've bought more of those than I have comic books in the past 5 or 6 years.
Oh, you still buy those?
Yeah, I mean, once the storyline's completed and I can buy the whole compendium, I will certainly buy that. I can read it in one sitting, or at least have it all together. I don't have to, you know, wait. You know, it's kind of like binge watching on Netflix, but in graphic
Right.
novel form.
Right.
And you know, you pay one price and you get the whole thing. It's very
Right.
convenient.
Right. Yeah, you make a good point. You know, sometimes I'll you know like the new X-Files season came out and it's 10 episodes and I'm like, well, I can watch them and wait each week, or I can wait till they're on Netflix and just watch them all together. Right. It's kind of the same mentality, um, and that's the way things are going. So I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of knowledge to be had in comic books, taking from the Japanese market and adapting certain aspects of those to the American market. You know, I mean, it just makes sense to me.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I definitely agree. I like the fact that they do have new IPs and new ideas. It just keeps everything fresh. You know, Batman in all reality should be dead from old age. Well, now there's like 16 different Batmans though.
You
So
know, it's funny because I just shared on my Facebook post the other day about how I was all excited because it was Wednesday and it was 50-cent wings day at Pizza Hut, and it was Comic Book Wednesday, and I actually put it's, you know, Bruce Wayne's first reappearance as Batman after he was thought killed by Darkseid. I mean, that's how nerdy I was, but I actually posted that on Facebook. But yeah, I mean, Batman's been dead or gone how many times, and he either comes back, you know, Ra's al Ghul brings him back, or whatever the case is. It's just,
yeah, and to me, it just got the arcs got ridiculous. They try to hype up stuff over superhero deaths, but they don't matter. I remember the first big one, the death of Superman. I thought was amazing, and then of course he comes back. Um, but that whole arc with Doomsday and everything was really good. It just they can't stick with it, and you don't blame them. What if they didn't make any more Superman comic books, right? Because Superman's dead. It doesn't make sense for them.
No, it doesn't. And I mean, Superman's very iconic. So is Batman. They've been around forever. They continue to make money off of movies or merchandise or whatever. No,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't make sense to try to kill them off and create new versions of them. They always have to bring them back because the new versions don't make any money. But that's fine. You can keep Bruce Wayne around for 100, 200 years and just keep him as Batman and he never ages or whatever, right? Because he's always going to be constantly introduced to a new era. So all you have to do is update the technology that Batman works with. I mean, Batman originally had a phone that the mayor would call, and it blinked red, right? Well, now Batman can have a cell phone because, cell phone technology. So, I mean, it makes perfect sense to keep the characters, update
Yeah.
the technology they work with, update their storylines,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't make sense to try to make you buy 10 different comics to follow one storyline, especially if you have to do that every week. And then you multiply that by however many main characters you're following, right? So if you have to do that, Captain America, Iron Man, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, I mean, I was literally buying, I bet, 30 comics a week and spending a buttload of money, and it became just a chore to try to read them all.
Mm-hmm. But the one thing that I always look back at is there are some comic books that don't do that in America, right? Spawn is a good example. Usually, that's a self-contained story. Um, they have one Spawn comic. Now they did like the Sam and Twitch side stories. I don't know how familiar you are with Spawn, but that was kind of like the American version of manga, right? I mean, uh,
Right, and you get Todd McFarlane, who mostly has creative control over that. So when the corporate people say, "Hey, let's make Spawn," and then a female version of Spawn, and then let's make a
right.
Spawn in an alternate dimension, he's like, "No, I'm good."
Right, exactly. Right. That's the problem. That's the problem with video games. That's the problem with movies. Is that the corporate people want to just make money, make money, make money until it's saturated and it's not good anymore.
Right,
So
I completely agree with
yeah,
that.